good people of the channel. In fact, bad people of the channel too. I don't discriminate as long as you watch. I thought I would do a bit of a change of location this time round, as opposed to being in my domestic scene or of course underground in my Vanguard storage unit. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking to you a little bit about the next plan, and I hope that you'll find that interesting, although there will be a couple of little interspersed travelogue bits as we go along. So this episode I'm going to talk to you about the globally anticipated and of course much vaunted design and build project that some part of this YouTube channel will become. But we'll also visit an old friend, drive around a rainy island and greet some cows. Tantalising, I know. I'll do the Shetland bit first. I headed up to the main island again, mainly to retrieve a load of heavy stuff from Alan. I had a few spare hours to drive north in a deeply sensational loop. It was wet and windy for the most part, but that's no reason to deny you the sort of scenic B-roll that would satisfy the editor of a middling to low budget daytime television series. The perpetual wind is wisely harnessed by Shetlanders, and as far as I could ascertain, the sheep couldn't give a Alan! More pleasant lowland hills and some old stone ruins which seem to punctuate each field that you come across. Naturally, the wildlife was charming as ever, and specialised in finding the most comfortable spots to spend the autumn afternoon. I went looking for a spectacular waterfall, and found this. We're on to a winner so far, people of the channel. Eventually I found the coastline again, which is an achievement of sorts on a small island, and enjoyed that until I happened upon the oil and gas terminal, where there were many boats, and also a trio of stacks burning off surplus gas. With all of this fossil fuel industry chat, let's get back to Alan, himself a keen diesel burner. And here he is. But before I complete the rather incidental travelogue sub-narrative for this episode, to which Alan is nonetheless key, Real Alex will now take over with the main course. You'll have to excuse me for a couple of notes, but there were a number of bullet points I want to make sure that I cover and that I don't forget. And so, of course, this big design and build project is going to be a natural segue from the discussion that we had in the "Why has no one skied to the North Pole" question I had in that episode, was it a couple of weeks ago now, where I was discussing the recent history in particular of how logistics in the far north and on the Arctic Ocean works, or more recently, how it does not work. And what I thought would be interesting to do is, of course, try and solve that problem. In particular, I'm really keen that the style, and in fact I guess you could say the spirits of the channel and the style of episodes, follows in the wake of how Alan's episodes used to be. I don't want to try and completely reimagine the style of the channel, because obviously we were doing some things right, otherwise you guys would have deserted us long ago. So what I've been trying to look at now is, of course, what that vehicle is going to look like, because it will be no surprise to you that we are going to try and design and build some form of vehicle. In fact, not just one. It's going to be, and this is ambitious I know, a small fleet of vehicles. I'm going to try and organise and divide up the episodes in a common sense way, and so we'll be doing, of course, over a period of weeks and months, and I hope that you guys will have some kind of input into the direction that we take, looking at the testing and design of what we actually want to achieve, what problems we want to try and solve. Some of that will be looking, of course, at the materials and different types of combinations of materials in isolation, but also there will be some prototyping, there'll be some scale models built, and I'll take those out to some cold places to test them, so that's pretty exciting. And then, of course, there will be the first build of the actual proper first candidate vehicle, which will then go and test properly in the Arctic and see whether it is absolutely fantastic or whether we need to start all over again. Those of you who are really into project management and systems engineering will love the fact that we're going to be doing a full breakdown and categorized priority list of things that this vehicle needs to be able to achieve. They will all be organized into a proper matrix, and then we will have a discussion about what is more important than what else, and also, of course, how they all interact, as it probably should be done for anyone who designs anything from the ground up, from scratch. And this is where there's going to be a load of overlap from how all of the old Alan episodes used to look. There'll be no surprise that, of course, we'll be making really good use of composites, because they are ridiculously high performance for the weight. They're not cheap, but we hope that they'll become a really integral part of whatever vehicle is going to be put together and designed. We are going to be also still using a fair amount of diesel, I suspect. I'm going to look at alternative opportunities for power and for how we can be efficient out on the ice. Yes, there's going to be ice as well as water that we're dealing with, no big surprise there. Also lots of DC electrics, that's become a bit of a long-running theme for me. There'll be wind and solar. I know that for some reason everyone gets incredibly excited by solar. For some reason my videos on that tend to do very, very well, and so I'll try and make sure that both wind and solar are central to the conversation, but in particular looking at the new innovations, because I'm sure you all know that both wind and solar, particularly the technology and the consumer devices now available are getting much cleverer than they were even 5 years ago. There's also going to be lots of discussion of how you're going to be living within this sort of a vehicle, because of course with Alan I was always trying to secondarily modify what was already there in the first place, but we're now starting from scratch, and that will give us a whole load of different opportunities. So there's going to be things about how do we heat, how do we maintain moisture control, how do we get hold of water, all sorts of stuff like that. There'll be navigation, lots of gadgets and gizmos and devices to be thinking about, and also the way to balance this vehicle's performance on both ice and water. That's not going to be an easy thing. Generally, if you look at the history of sort of amphibious vehicles of such, whether they're talking about normal terrain and water or ice and water, there are normally a whole load of compromises that you need to make. And I'm going to make sure that they are thought through as carefully as possible so we don't make any mistakes. The final point I want to make before I sign off for this sort of mini episode is about how the new channel structure and support is going to look, because of course there was the wonderment of different levels of membership support for the channel that was based mostly around Alan. It was supposed to cover the Arctic stuff too, but of course Alan was a dominating force on the channel. I'm going to try and first of all chat to those of you who are already members about how you might want that to look. Oh, there are some people getting very angry in their cars over there. So I'm going to be trying to work out what would suit you guys best, and in particular to suit those who are more interested in the stories and the travel, and those of you who are more interested in the technology, the development and all that sort of stuff. I'll try and get that balance right, and in particular, as I said, to maintain the spirit of how this channel first came to be. It will come as no surprise to you that I will continue asking questions for contributions and ideas to the channel, and that's not just to appease the YouTube gods and to try and get the algorithm to work for us once more. It's been a bit on and off over the last few months, and in particular I think we last had a really big trending kick well over a year ago now, but all we can do is try and do our best and produce the very best content that we possibly can. When I say we, I mean me. As I said, part of the reason for the trip up, save for just to check out the old lump and have a catch-up, was to offload some heavy things. I'd not had a car up there before, and it's cheaper to load up a rental car than to pallet freight things like batteries weighing 60 kilograms apiece. So these were extricated, as were other bulky and unwieldy things that will either become part of the next project or have a new home lined up for them. Done, and the drive home was fun. I discovered a castle. Scotland does castles perhaps better than anyone else. Then the obligatory non-exotic wildlife footage you all enjoy, and dare I say demand. But wildlife in not just any location. Because we are in Montrose. We anchored here a few episodes ago, and for reasons of schedule and an early start the next day, Murray and I didn't go ashore as originally hoped. Well, I'm ashore now. Here's the first bridge we couldn't get under, and the railway bridge just beyond, and the shallow waters of the basin where we'd intended to anchor. Instead, we'd used this spot back in the summer, which did the job just fine. I also did want to see the memorial for the famous Norwegian dog from the Second World War, sat on the north bank. Further along the trip south, on yet another note of domestic animal excitement, I met a cow. In fact, a number of them, guarding a 12th century priory. I went to have a look, and in particular critique the artwork. I approved of the priory, and so naturally moved directly south further to find a slightly larger waterfall near the Scotland-England border, before paying my respects to the founder of the Scottish National Party. One final countryside hotel, complete with deeply menacing guard dog. And home via East Coast fiberglass supplies. Real Alex will explain why. I know. I was supposed to be doing the sort of the walking and talking explainer all outdoors in the forest or the park. But then I realised, first of all, that my DJI action camera was not doing that well with the low light, and then I realised I had something else to talk to you about, and so I thought I'd just add this little domestic ender onto the episode. The first one being, on the way back down from Scotland, I went via Newcastle, which is where East Coast fiberglass supplies are, and I've actually used them quite a lot in the past. They're quite useful in the fact that they don't necessarily overlap in their stock. They do a little bit, but they do have a lot of stock which, for instance, Easy Composites, who you'll know I've done stuff with in the past, don't have, and then vice versa. So they're not necessarily sort of at loggerheads with each other. You can be a good, loyal customer of both Easy Composites and East Coast fiberglass supplies. And I was picking up some Ennegra because we're going to be doing some Ennegra testing, and that's another test and another clue as to where my design and build might be going with. Don't worry, we won't be abandoning carbon fibre, but Ennegra, I've done some testing before, but we're going to be going a lot further and doing it a little bit more quantitatively. And then, very kindly, some of the team there watch the channel, and they're sort of into what I do, and in fact some of them are really keen on the Alan stuff, and obviously we're lamenting the end of the Alan saga, and they very kindly gave me some new some new epoxy resin. This is laminating epoxy resin to test. Most of the good premium epoxy resins are much of a muchness, but anyway, I've not used this this brand before, and so thank you to the guys at East Coast for giving me some free epoxy resin. I will never say no to good epoxy resin. I'm also giving into the enormous pressure that some of you experts in both CAD and 3D printing had during most of the process of doing the whole Allen thing. And some people have been really pressuring me to try and 3D print plastic things, and in particular just try and go towards the computer modeling side of design and build. And I'm going to not fully give in to your demands, but I am going to delve into the world of some CAD, some 3D CAD, and I'm going to try and see, hopefully with some of your assistance, because I really am a beginner here, about how that might help in particular develop molds, because I'll need molds both for the small prototypes, which are probably 1 to 5 scale, and then also the large ones themselves, which will need perhaps some actually I don't even know what they're called. Let's call them bulkheads, but very, very carefully and specifically shaped pieces of either MDF or plywood or something, which forms the spine of a larger mold, which then can be bulked out by using modeling foam and various other things. You may be able to tell me the official designation for that. But anyway, I've been fiddling around, and at some point I may well come to you for some assistance. Thank you. I'm leaving the most exciting topic, of course, to the end, and that's the matter of what is this project and what are these vehicles going to be named. The word Allen is going to be probably kept for posterity for the previous projects. I'm not going to try and reuse that, but that doesn't mean that we can't be creative and that we can't try and come up with something which is equally ridiculous, fun, but also iconic. With that, I'm going to finish. I'll try not to step over or trip over any big tree roots here. Other than that, I will have more news for you soon, more videos coming through the pipeline, and from me in a forest that's pretending to be a forest but is in fact simply a park in southwest London. Bye.